Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt Santee, and today with me, I've got Carol Garboden Murray. Hi, Carol.
Hello.
And Richard Cohen. Hi, Richard.
Hi, everybody.
By the time this one comes out, everyone will have just heard our conversation with Nancy and Stacy about what should we call ourselves. So we're going to have a couple of weeks of good conversation on the show, I think.
Excellent.
So thanks for being here. I just want to tell the folks who are listening, this all started with, I'm just going to read the text. This all started with, I was having a very grouchy day, and I texted Carol and Richard, and I said, I'm wondering if you two would be interested in recording an episode with me to help me process my rage when I hear people say we don't need just 1,000 more slots to babysit kids. We need them to be learning. Because in various conversations, sometimes it's with other early childhood people, sometimes it's with, my higher ed colleagues, sometimes it's just in general conversation. This idea that if we're going to give you any money, it has to be quality, and quality somehow translates for them into, well, that means they're learning. It's not just babysitting. And there's so many triggers for me,
Right,
all of
right.
that. This idea that there's only one way to have quality, that we can't just, you know, reward or pay for or support uh just being human and alive together. Or we have to, everything has to look like school to be valuable. There's so much in there that drives me crazy. um so that's kind of my starting point here. And I just, between our pre-recording chat and just now, I just changed the plan from the quote we talked about to my text being the quote. So why did you say you'd come on and talk to me about this?
Well, before we dive into the content, just now before we recorded, the three of us were chatting, and we were talking about
And
the
it was lovely.
context in which this quote came out, the timing of it.
Hmm.
And Carol, you made a really important point about the timing of it. I wonder if we could maybe set the context before we dive into the
Hmm.
content. Carol, could you
Yes,
read what you said?
sure. I said I've been hearing similar comments in my community because of the elections coming up, because of the competition for grant
Hmm.
money right now, and the way we are sort of conceptualizing what happens in early education and who deserves the money, who deserves the funding, and what is really an essential kind of program. And I am hearing more about play, but I'm still hearing very, very little about care in my
Hmm.
state. I'm in New York, and it's still being framed from we are not babysitter
Hmm.
standpoint.
Right, right. And I'm hearing a lot, as you are, about universal pre-K, about funding pre-K
Hmm.
as meaning getting them on the assembly line a year earlier versus giving families what they need, which is universal childcare
Right.
from the moment the child is born or even before.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's the other context that I am hearing this in, is there is an issue, and I've heard it in multiple communities from people all over the place, but our community too, that employers feel like they're not finding the staff they need because the staff, those human beings who have children, don't have childcare. And so everyone's very concerned about it, but we're also adding this level of, but it can only be this kind of child, it can only be this kind of stuff. It has to be learning, it has to be, like I said before, this idea of quality that, let's be honest, we can't really define quality. We think we all know what we're talking about when we use the word, but other than checklists we try to implement, we're all probably meaning different things when we talk about those things.
And every
I
family,
suspect we agree. Oh, go ahead, Carol. I'm sorry.
oh no, I was just saying every family, every child, especially the babies, toddlers, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, are a member of a family.
Hmm.
And every family needs something so different to live a flourishing life.
Hmm.
And when we give families what they need, then the stress level decreases,
Hmm.
the learning opportunities improve for the child. And so I know there are some states who are saying like this whole mixed delivery system, I know even for them, like in Colorado, it's very messy and they're still having some debates about what quality looks like. But at least in some states, they're acknowledging that the family deserves a child care program that stays open till 7:30 because the mom is working a late shift. And that shouldn't be less important or less meaningful or less of a learning opportunity for the child who is there having dinner, brushing their teeth, getting ready for stories. Those experiences are just as meaningful and a child is learning in every moment.
Carol, will you tell the listeners more about the phrase mixed delivery system?
I think what some of the politicians are talking about, not in my state, but in other states, I've heard politicians talking about mixed delivery, mean families could have choices. So there could be a pot of money that's available, and depending on your needs, you might be able to choose to pay your aunt who happens to be caring for your child in her home. You might be able to choose to pay your aunt your allotted childcare money because she's doing a great job supporting your family and caring for your child. You might be able to choose the church nursery school. You may be able to choose the universal pre-K program. That there is a mix. There's a mix. There's an acknowledgement that families have so many different needs, and that really saying that the only way you can access early education is by attending this certain kind of program is discriminatory. And a lot of the people who are missing out most from the way money is coming to us is the middle class family, because a lot of the children in poverty, I was just asking Heather about that interesting talk I heard with Casey with the
Stock still.
yes, with the false start, the segregation. So there is money coming to the low income and in the poverty, the children who are in families that are struggling with poverty, but the middle class is not able to pay for a quality, whatever
Right. Yeah.
quality
Air quotes.
preschool. So the middle class are still patching together care. Like we've been talking about this patchwork system for about 20 years. Maybe my grandma watches the baby on Monday, and maybe on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday I can afford the neighborhood daycare, and maybe on Friday my husband watches or my partner or my friend watches. So the middle class kids are getting a very different experience, and or their parents are paying exorbitant amount for childcare and going in debt to do so, or putting it on their credit card and hoping that they'll get ahead when the kids get into public school.
Yeah.
So there's just so many ways children are being cared for. And when we continue to say, we are school, not care, we're denigrating care. We're not recognizing care is education.
Right.
And we're not recognizing the needs of infants and toddlers.
Oh, for sure.
Infants and
Yeah.
toddlers are getting hurt so much by the way the funding is coming down.
Yeah, one of the arguments that used to be made to me in the universal pre-K conversation or whatever is that it would be a good thing for infants and toddlers because the preschoolers would be like taken care of, and then we could focus more on the infants and toddlers, but that's not what I see happening. And I think about times when I'm invited to be part of conversations as the early childhood subject matter expert and immediately shut down. Like if I suggest that family childcare homes need to be part of the solution or the conversation or the puzzle, it shut down. If I use the word care, we were told in a meeting with an expert on grant writing a while ago, not to, and I know Carol, you've had these experiences too. Don't talk about care. You have to talk about early learning, or you're not going to get anything. And uh, it's insulting, right, to those of us who know how valuable care is and how much of a role that warm, responsive, informed care is that we provide for those children, can be more of a contributing factor if we're talking about human capital and return on investment than just making sure that our childcare center looks like a school. And,
Yeah.
you know, and or that we have a circle time that lasts a half an hour, or that we have a phonics program that we use.
Right.
I,
And not
I
to
was in
sound like a
Go
nerd
ahead.
record, because you've heard me say this all the time, but I gotta say it to put it
Yeah.
out there on. All I'm hearing and what we're talking about is patriarchy,
Yeah.
misogyny, and white supremacy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have said that a lot, and that's okay, because this might be someone's first episode. But and because it continues to be true. But so, you know, just like you asked Carol to talk about mixed delivery system, I'm going to ask you to unpack that a little bit. Especially white supremacy. People hear that and they think I am not, because we have one image of what white supremacy is, right? But
Mhm.
it's really just the idea that the kind of white middle class way of doing things is the norm, and we should all, that should be our goal, right? But you can
Right.
add what you want to that.
Well, so I was, as you know, I was born into a white male body. And so I'd actually like the two of you to unpack it a little bit more and me to stay quiet.
Oh, okay.
Because I represent the problem. I'm the last one who needs to be man person,
Sure.
mansplaining, white-splaining, whatever splaining to you two people. So if you two could say more about your thoughts on those ideas, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the patriarchy is probably the easiest one then of those for me to speak to. And that's just the idea, or in this context, what I mean when I say patriarchy plays a role in this is that, you know, care is seen as women's work. But not we talk a big game about how that being like a compliment to women. It's like benevolent sexism to say, well, you're just caring. Women are just so much more caring or whatever, because we don't value the care that we're saying they're so good at. This is a prime example. It's essentially saying without saying, um, uh, we can't just settle for care, because that's anti-intellectual, and that's soft, and it's not, we can't commodify it. We can't sell you a care package to work into your day. We can't assess it with a test and then sell you the test. It's just something women are naturally good at. So yay for you women out there caring. But we'll come in now with our definitions of quality and our um, rigor and our high expectations, and we'll save the day, and we'll turn these kids into something good.
Yeah.
But thanks for
Into
changing
something
their
hard.
diapers. What,
Right.
Richard?
Well, you said care is soft.
Yeah,
In a patriarchal society, the world is viewed as hard.
yeah.
And we're trying to prepare them for a hard world. So softness isn't valued.
Hmm.
And home isn't valued.
Yeah,
The baby, the toddler, the young child, the smaller the child, the supposedly the less intellectual, the less whole, that
right.
when we know the opposite is true. And so we're all trying to build systems around this model of maybe the public school,
Hmm.
and maybe that model is built around this idea of a factory and getting people ready for the workplace. And maybe that notion in general is rooted in white supremacy.
Hmm.
And we could also go the other direction and say that, other cultures, and other times, the work of women and the way children have been cared for in communities is disregarded.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And part of it too, I think, comes from this myth that there used to be this glorious time in American history where women stayed home with their children and were happy to do so. And now the audacity of women to want to try and get into this workforce and ask us to care for their children, when in fact women have always worked. It may have been more of that work may have been done by women of color, and women in poverty,
Yes.
than uh, than that middle class ideal that didn't really exist the way we remember it existing. It's,
That's
TV
right.
is very powerful.
Well, that's where the phrase "Make America Great" comes again, isn't it?
Yes.
It's promoting that illusion that
Yes.
never was for
Yes.
people who dearly want a sense of safety and security that also
Yeah.
never was.
Yeah. And then, capitalism comes in because I can't just pay you for nothing. I can't just give you money to do what should be natural for you as a caring woman taking care of children. You have to prove to me that I'm getting something out of this.
Yes.
Um, and care, like I said a minute ago, care or quote unquote just babysitting is hard to commodify. So we can't
That's
value
right.
it. Oh,
And
good.
something shameful. And there's something shameful about it, if
Yeah.
you have to work, if you have to leave your baby with someone
Yeah.
else. That's really nothing that we want to talk about
Right.
because babies belong with their mommies in the home where the
Mhm.
dad's off making a living. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's a fantasy. It's
Yeah.
not reality that ideal family, if we want to say it's ideal, I don't
Right.
think exists, but also like somehow that's not we're ashamed of it. Like
Hmm.
women who have to work, if you think of follow after the Civil War when childcare's started becoming places where women had to leave their children because their husband had died in the Civil War.
Hmm.
Husband were drunk or what does she say? They died, they were drunk, or they were, they had gone crazy from the war.
Hmm.
Women were working. So it was this shameful thing to need childcare.
Hmm.
And then the people who were trying to promote childcare were doing so from this sort of welfare model, like,
Right.
oh, these poor women and oh, these poor children, care was just a big mess. It was
Hmm.
any sort of industrial care or community care was seen as something that was sort of shameful.
Hmm.
Um, and in some ways, we haven't come far from that.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And for
Depending
people
on
like
who's
we
making
three,
the proclamation about it.
that's right. That's right.
Go ahead,
And for
Richard.
people like we three, it's so incredibly frustrating, enraging, whatever word you want, because we sit here in 2024, having lived through decades of this amazing profession of early childhood.
Hmm.
We've watched science advance, research advance, theories advance in our little early childhood world. And then simultaneously, we've watched it ignored and deprioritized. Um, all happening during the course of our careers, and
Hmm.
it's enraging.
Yeah. And so that brings another element of this in, I think, this idea that we have this talking point. There's research that shows that high quality early childhood education has all of these far off benefits that society will benefit from. And and I've started in conversations where I'm hearing that, I say, which research are you talking about? What was happening in the daily life of the children in the programs in that research? Because I guarantee it wasn't elementary school for 3 and 4 year olds in that research. If we look at, I mean, one that comes up a lot is Rebecca Marcon, which was play or direct instruction. And the play was the children who were in the programs where there was more play. Um, we're getting all these good outcomes that we're talking about. If we're talking about the Ypsilanti study, or however you say it, I always say it wrong.
You did it
Um,
right.
there was there was no Bank Street curriculum developed that they used during the time of that study. Louise Derman Sparks, who was a teacher in that study, wrote an article about what was really happening. So again, it wasn't academics. It wasn't early academics that was bringing those return on investment. There was family outreach, and there was an acknowledgement of the stress of poverty in that contributes to the outcomes they got. So it's not that we have all this research that says, we look at Dale Farron, the only kind of longitudinal, the researchy words are failing me, um, study in Tennessee on the effects of pre-K. She went into it thinking public pre-K, I'm going to prove that it's good. And it turned her upside down. And she actually found that there were negative impacts if you go further out from third grade. And so we have people coming in and dropping in this idea that, well, research shows that high quality, blah, blah, blah. But no one's going in deeper to say, okay, how was quality defined in those research pieces and those programs? And I think somebody's got to start. Somebody whose voice is louder than me has to start pushing back on that.
I think that Dell's study said a lot about care, because the way she talks about that study is she feels like the things that were missing from those UPKs in Tennessee were things like, conversations. And she saw kids standing in line to have to go to the bathroom, standing in line to have to wash their hands, being told to keep their mouth quiet, being told that they weren't good at being in school, right? That being in school was about containment. So all the elements of care were missing. And the messages that they got about themselves as learners, as beings, as humans were not overwhelmingly positive. It was
Yeah.
a lot of work to keep your mouth shut and keep still and stop wiggling when you're 3 and 4.
Sure.
So
Specifically in school buildings where they were having to walk so far to get to all the different places that they had to get to for those needs to be, that care to be given, or those needs to be met. That was a piece of it too.
So I'm sure there are people that have the UPK money that are doing good care with it. But I know one thing that has come up in New York State has been the complaining about diapers and about kids who have accidents. And it's like, and the way that parents are made to feel, come get your kid. We don't change diapers here. He had another pee accident. He pooped his pants. These are kids who are 4-year-olds, but some of them aren't quite 4 yet in the fall when they're eligible for these programs. So, I think New York State was one of the states who passed a law that, the discrimination, it can be discriminatory to not allow a child to come to your program, a publicly funded program, for reasons of toilet learning, potty training, what you want to call it. But the way people are interpreting that is just saying, okay, well, if you're telling us it's a law, then the parents can come. They can leave their work and come change the diaper. I mean, how does that make the child feel? How does that make the parent feel? What does that say about our understanding about child development? What does that say about accessibility and belonging? Some things like that, where care is considered less than education, are really harmful.
Yeah. So one of the quotes I found as I was searching for a quote that we ended up not using anyway comes from this book, The Decommodification of Early Childhood Care and Education, Resisting Neoliberalism. It's a big thing. But one of the things that they wrote about was the idea that we need to be challenging the idea that quality is something that can be measured or that exists external to people's lived experience. And that's what I thought of as you were talking, like the lived experience of the children in those spaces is what determines quality, whether it's my aunt's house, home with my mom or my dad or whoever, in a childcare center, in a home. It's the lived experience that matters, and that's what's going to shape that person. That's what's going to get. We have to just get back to that humanity, I think, is where I'm going with that. And so quality becomes really problematic for the that law about having to be fully independently toileting before you can come into this space, and the messages that sends, because we value getting through our daily schedule or getting through our planned activities, or because this is a place of learning. Care is something else. It's heartbreaking to me.
It is. I remember when I first met Richard and I was talking about this, and I said something like, care rituals have the potential to be this deep, meaningful, powerful, invigorating curriculum, right? There's so much around care. And I'm thinking to myself, like, we're sitting together and we're having a meal together and we're having conversations and we're talking about where the food came from, and we're talking about if we're full and we're relaxed and we're a community. So I'm thinking care rituals have this potential to be this deep, powerful, meaningful curriculum. And Richard, you said something like they always are. It's not they have potential. They always are. So the child is learning a negative or positive
Right.
right? So they always, like,
Right.
kids always have to be cared for. And so they always are getting a lesson from care. What lesson are they getting is the
Mhm.
question. So the fact you said it's not a potential, it is the curriculum because
Mhm.
kids have to be cared for. I thought, yes, that's what we need to say is that it's there. It's always there. And so
Right.
it's just baffling why we can't look at it, talk about it, acknowledge it, illuminate it.
Mhm.
Caring for children must exist. How much of our day when we're with 3 and 4-year-olds do we spend caring? Why are
Right.
we trying to put something else on top of that and say
Mhm.
this is learning and that is care, or
Mhm.
separate them or segregate them?
Well, and we know we don't have to. If we follow the child's lead, if we allow them to live their days, follow what interests them and is meaningful to them, learning explodes around us. We just have to watch for it and
Mhm.
encourage it and facilitate it and provide them the things they need, and they'll be ready for kindergarten. We think that it's an either or, it's care or learning. And in
Mhm.
fact, they go hand in hand in the lives of a young child, right? Every minute from the time they wake up till they go to bed. We just have to, if we prioritize care and relationship building, but and Carol, well, I won't, okay. You've taught me to value the intellect of early childhood through my artistic lens. And I appreciate that very much. And so I know that if I focus on care with young children and spend my days there with young children, I also have enough intellectual capacity to facilitate their learning and make sure that they have everything they need to be ready for kindergarten and life beyond.
Mhm.
But if I just focus on those things, on the latter things, um, it's a losing battle because without the care, the learning crumbles.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but also, I
There's
would
oh,
add, no, go ahead, Kathy.
no, please finish.
Well, I was going to go to a different topic, but
That's okay.
okay. When you were speaking a moment ago, Carol, you were saying very passionately, uh, what about the children and what about the parents in this scenario? And I thought, yes, yes, yes. And what about the early childhood professionals in this
Mhm.
scenario as well? We talk about this incredible shortage we have in this field, and we
Mhm.
don't know how to fill it. And the answer is right there in front of us. What will keep people, in addition to, you know, um, workable salaries, where people can actually earn a living in our field. Of course, what
Mhm.
I'm about to say doesn't discount that. But what draws and keeps people to our field is caring, is the human relationships, the feeling of leading a community. And I feel like we're hemorrhaging great early
Yeah.
educators, not bringing in new ones also
Yeah.
because of this deprioritization of the soft side of the first 5 years.
Mhm. Yeah. The I mean, of course, the main reason I hear people not choosing to enter or choosing to leave early childhood work is that it's hard to make a living. It's hard to take care of yourself on what you get
Yep.
paid. But the other thing that I hear a lot, whether it's from people that I connect with through the podcast work or whether it's like my students or people in my community, is behavior stuff, quote unquote again. And the idea that children are so much harder now, especially since COVID, because of, it, I'll attribute it to trauma. I know that there are people who would argue with me that COVID is over and we need to just get back to it. But um
Have
uh
one of those people on this podcast with me.
yeah,
I'll
okay, I'll see if I can
and
get them. Yeah.
Carol.
Yeah, but
Yep.
the idea that the behaviors are just so much harder and bigger and the needs are bigger and they feel less able to to meet that. When I ask them to describe specifically what the challenges are, it's a lot of times it's because we're trying to keep them into this school schedule, and that's not what they need. So the children's brains tell their body what they need, and their body tells us what they need. Um, is connection and safety and care. And I feel like if we could shift out of this, everything has to matter to someone else's priority, and everything has to be getting them ready for the next thing. then we're going to continue to lose people who hate their job because they feel like they can't meet children's needs. Instead of saying, well, let's put all that on hold for a while and just meet needs and just play and care and be human together and see what changes.
Yeah,
But we're not.
I was reading Carol, was it Carol Gerhart Mooney? Is that her name? She has
Yeah.
that book, Use Your Words.
Use your words, use your words. Yeah.
I like her work.
Yeah.
And she was saying in all her years, through all her career, that's what she's always heard is behaviors are worse than they've ever been.
Yeah.
We can't control these kids anymore.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I've heard the same thing my whole career. And just yesterday, I had a teacher say something like, he's not listening. He's not here to learn.
No, brother. Yeah. Or he's making it hard for the kids who want to learn.
I said, she's a lovely person and she's used to working with toddlers.
Yeah.
I think that she's not used to this 4-year-old. This kid has just turned 4. And so I was describing to her, like, not listening is kind of the work of the 4-year-old. You know, it's really common for us to think 4-year-olds are really bratty, but now he's really, you were his goddess when he was 3, and now he's 4, and he really prefers to make his friends laugh. Developmental thing that's happening. It's what he needs to be doing right now.
Yeah.
He is learning.
Yeah.
He's learning how to be a peer. He's learning how to push back. He's learning how to challenge authority and how to, you know, so he's learning a lot, but he's not learning because he's not listening is something we hear a lot with the 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
Right. And he's not learning. No, go ahead.
No, I just, what was it? The Crisis in Kindergarten report, that's probably 20 years old now. We're going to hear more.
2011, I think. Yeah.
Okay. More and more and more and more behavior problems as the expectations on
quote unquote behavior problems.
Behavior problems.
I got to get that in the air quotes for the listeners.
Exactly. As these expectations of 4-year-olds increase.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not, as you said, Carol, it's not that he's not learning. It's that he's not learning the things that somebody else said are the standards for learning that he should be focused on right now.
And what he might be learning is, I'm not good at school. I'm not a good learner.
That's right.
He is sorry. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Richard. Go ahead.
The way school defines learning.
Right.
Or oftentimes the way this person who said this to Carol, the way my boss defines learning based on our funding needs and then how my job description has been crafted and the expectations from our licensing agency about what I'm supposed to be doing in my job. And so I'm scared to lose my job.
Yeah.
So through that lens, he's not learning.
Yeah.
But the truth is, he's been on the planet for 1,200 days. I'm not good at math, but however long that is. He doesn't have a job description. He didn't wake up this morning coming to a job.
Yeah.
He woke up this morning and is here because his parent or whoever dropped him here, and he has to be here. He didn't agree to learn. He agreed to wake up and be in this place. You're the one who has to have the skills, the lovely, wonderful facilitation skills to help him learn all the things his body is telling him he wants to learn, and perhaps some other things that he doesn't know yet that you can help him also learn.
I wonder, do you all think that we have caused this in part? This image that early childhood education is the image of the little scholar. I mean, because in our need to prove that we are teachers, and this mantra that I often hear is like, parents expect this, we have to do this because parents want this.
Yeah. Sometimes parents want you to bite their kids back and we say no because we know it's not okay. We are capable of saying no to families.
How do we talk to politicians who have that image of the little scholar? Like the kids are sitting at their desk and they're writing their names, and this is what we need. Or we're sending in tutors, math and reading tutors to get them ready. Like, how do we push back against that people think that's adorable, that little children are learning little lessons, and it's just really insulting to those of us who know kids.
Yeah, I think we, as a field of practice, have contributed. I think we started to be part of this political conversation, and we thought, oh yes, we're finally in the boat, but let's don't rock the boat because they'll kick us out of the boat again. And instead of saying, we're here with you now, let us help you understand what that means when you're birth to 5, that learning, what this brain development stuff means. It doesn't mean we push more down earlier because that's such a critical time. It means we have to figure out what feeds that brain development, and do those things more. And we saw that, oh, finally, they're going to see us, they're going to respect us, and sort of created this vicious cycle.
Yes. For me, anecdotally, I can trace it back to, I want to say, you all tell me the date of this, but No Child Left Behind, was that mid-90s?
Yeah.
Late 90s?
Yeah.
And that's when I was, as I always have been, traveling around all different places all over the world, particularly all over this country. And that was, to me, when I noticed suddenly places were adding the word academy onto the name of their preschool
Yeah.
or their early childhood program. And so the program down the block from me in Chicago, Jolly Fun House, became Jolly Fun House Academy. And that's when I started noticing all these places adding the word academy, because No Child Left Behind had these learning standards. And so parents suddenly were propagandized, were manipulated into believing that the learning standards were the be-all end-all of what you should look for in a good early childhood program.
Well, and I think No Child Left Behind brought in the testing, right? I mean, I think a lot of this started when we let Russia beat us to the moon in the 50s or whenever that was, and we got all freaked out about that. But and No Child Left Behind brought in that new level of pressure where we're going to start assessing and testing now. And then Race to the Top came in after that. And now every state has to have early childhood standards. And instead of saying, okay, we'll develop early childhood standards, let's look at what's a priority for an infant. Let's look at developmentally what's a priority for a 1-year-old, typically. But no, we said, what do we want our 18-year-olds to be doing? And we built backwards.
That's right. And by the way, as a process person, Race to the Top is a horrific name for this program.
Yes.
It's a very patriarchal, patriarchally based phrase that values the product and the top versus the journey and the process.
Speed. Yeah. And doing it faster.
And what about those of us who work with children with special needs and those of us who have divergent learning styles? I mean, is education about competition? And are some children who are getting to the top sooner and faster, are they better than other children? This places such a value on human life.
Yeah.
Instead of doing what's right, it's putting children in a competitive framework, which is just really troubling.
Well, it's saying we're worried about the world as it is now and as it's going to be. Who could we put the pressure on to fix it for us? Let's throw it on a 3-year-old's shoulders.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Well, let's throw it on a, I don't have the right word, on a implicitly white upper middle class 3-year-old child.
Yes.
And then apply all of those goals and standards to every child. So that subset were the norm for everybody.
Yeah.
There's my rage.
Yeah, your rage was so great it made you freeze on screen for a minute.
Sorry.
That's okay. I don't know how to wrap this up. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
I think the reason we get so outraged is because damage is done, right? Because when his care can be uncaring, damage can be done. So we don't want to create a hierarchy and say learning to write your name is less important than learning to develop a relationship with your body, feel comfortable, feel like you belong, all the things that we know we learn. Actually, there probably is a hierarchy, and it probably is more important that we are cared for first, and that when we are cared for first, we see that there is no separation, and then our brain is ready to think and to take a perspective and to solve problems because we're cared for. And this way that we're still separating education and care after all these years is so disheartening. And, you know, I did, like, what would I say to a politician? I did hear when I was in Nebraska, I met some family home childcare people, and they said, like, you know, that there were some new initiatives, like if they got their CDA, if they got whatever accreditation that get that they could now get more money. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's the kind of thing that I think we should be doing. I know that there's questions about rating scales and all that, but we already have an infrastructure in our country of people who are caring,
Mhm.
and they are kept at such a place of poverty, like putting initiative on the people who do this work so well and saying like, here, you can have $2 an hour more
Mhm.
because you have your CDA. You can learn to care better, and you can be a living model that care is education. And what these women were talking about the relationships they had with these families, and they were working with a lot of single moms. They were
Mhm.
working with military families, and they were getting like $2 an hour extra because they had got this CDA and this
Mhm.
accreditation. And they were talking about moms, calling them in the middle of the night because they were having problems nursing. Things like this that you like, what a powerful role those family home childcare people have in changing the life of
Mhm.
these children, because they're connected to these moms at these
Yeah.
critical. I mean, talk about nursing your baby.
Mhm.
What could be more important? But this is the stuff that we haven't found a way to value in our
Yeah.
society. And we need more initiatives. I know that, Heather, you've talked about like there's initiatives to maybe deregulate some of the qualifications for care in your
Mhm.
state. And some states are going that way instead of
Mhm.
building initiatives to care better and to build up the networks and the webs that we already have in our communities. In some places, they're making it more
Mhm.
dangerous. They're making
Mhm.
caregivers more vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's so
I think, I don't have a source for this. I could probably find it if someone wanted to challenge me. But I think most of the children who are in an a non-family care situation in the United States are in family child care homes, right? It's not centers that are doing most of this.
Mhm.
But
I
we're
know.
pushing those people away by
Yes.
setting this hierarchy. What were you going to say, Richard?
I apologize.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I was just maybe challenging your statistic. I'm not sure if that's, I would love for that to be true, that
I'm
most
gonna I'm
American
gonna look at
children
I'm
are
not
in families or in family childcare. I don't
I'm
think,
gonna look for it. I'm sure that that's what I have seen. Yeah. So
right.
and if
Whether
someone
it's
has something,
statistically
share it
accurate,
with me.
well, statistics are patriarchal, I'm going to say. Um, I don't care if it's statistically accurate. There's a
Yeah.
sizable percentage of American children who are suffering because of it, no matter what the statistics say.
Sure.
And
Okay.
that's your
Yeah.
main point.
Yeah.
That's your point that I want to support.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
There's so much more to unpack,
There
but
really is. Yes, for
kept it
sure.
encapsulated in this one today
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for being here and being part of it. And we'll just keep fighting, I guess. We'll just keep trying to be loud enough for someone to pay attention. And thanks everybody for listening to another episode. We'll see you next week.